I might just add one final comment, which is really exciting, that after 7 years on the low carbohydrate diet, my diabetes is completely in remission. And that's amazing because I've not heard of anyone going 7 years for their diabetes to be in remission. After 7 years on a high-fat diet, my diabetes has been reversed.
Can the low-carb, high-fat, ketogenic diet reverse diabetes? In addition to the Virta Health study, this video is going to take a look at Tim Noakes' recent announcement that he has reversed his diabetes. If you like this analysis of the crossroads between the food industry and the medical complex, be sure to hit subscribe so you can stay up to date on the people and the facts that lead to changes in public opinion about diet. To determine whether or not the keto diet can reverse diabetes, let's have a look at Tim Noakes and how he did it.
The key to this approach is each of us vary in our insulin resistance. And if you are profoundly insulin resistant like I am, and maybe have a diagnosis of diabetes, when you take carbohydrate, you cannot metabolize it normally, and people have to understand that. If you're like me, 25 grams of carbohydrate is all you may eat a day. That's it. You've got to get the grams of carbohydrate down below your threshold. And for me, it's 25. And to go up to 100, I would just put on weight and get progressively sicker. Now 100, let's see, what is 25 grams of carbohydrate? It's one apple. One apple.
It's key to distinguish the difference between reversal and remission when you're thinking about how the ketogenic diet is going to affect your diabetes. Remission means only a temporary recovery by definition. Realistically, if unresolved insulin resistance leaves you unable to eat an apple along with other healthy whole plant foods over the course of a day, do you think diabetes has been reversed? Alright, I want y'all to watch this video until the end because we're going to roll the full clip of Professor Noakes' announcement and then cover the Virta Health study.
I might just add one final comment, which is really exciting, that after 7 years on the low carbohydrate diet, my diabetes is completely in remission. And that's amazing because I've not heard of anyone going 7 years for their diabetes to be in remission. So it's really interesting because the Association for Dietetics in South Africa, who were party to the charge against me, originally promoted to their members that the reason why I'd got type 2 diabetes was because I started eating a high-fat diet for 3 months and then I suddenly got type 2 diabetes. The fact that I'd eaten a high carbohydrate diet in extremis for 33 years wasn't considered. So now they have a problem to explain why after 7 years on a high-fat diet, my diabetes has been reversed. And of course, they need also to address the question of the Virta Health study, which was published just a few months ago, showing also that 60% of people with type 2 diabetes who follow the Banting diet, and the Banting diet was part of the prescription for this population group, 60% of the people have put their type 2 diabetes into remission and either completely stopped using insulin or reduced it dramatically. So the tide has turned, and in the 4 years that we've been in court, I think the evidence has become so overwhelming that this is the diet that the majority of people should be eating, that the evidence is no longer controversial. It's now fact.
Let's look at the evidence he's talking about, and then you can decide if it's controversial or if it's solid enough to justify his assertion that the majority of people should be eating a diet severely restricted in carbohydrates and therefore limiting many healthy whole plant foods. Here's what you need to know about the Virta Health study according to prominent cardiologist Dr. Joel Kahn. The Virta Health program is centered around a single study, published in an electronic journal which was launched just last year. All of the authors of the study disclosed a financial relationship with Virta Health, and several of the authors also disclosed funding from Atkins Nutritionals, the National Dairy Council, and the Malaysian Palm Oil Board. The duration of the initial paper was only 10 weeks. and followed 262 people with type 2 diabetes. There was no control group. There was a 10% dropout rate. These people were provided detailed coaching and guidance in order to maintain the extremely limited carbohydrate restriction of just 30 grams per day. Remember what Tim Noakes said about one apple? It's doubtful that these subjects were able to eat even one apple, as they were consuming 3 to 5 servings of non-starchy vegetables per day. The subjects were able to lower their blood sugar and hemoglobin A1C such that many of them were able to reduce their need for diabetes medication. And that's the big draw of this study. The promise that you can lower or eliminate diabetes medication on this extreme diet brings a lot of people to the table. It's important to realize that people lost weight during the study and follow-up period, probably as a result of the decreased hunger commonly reported as the result of ketosis. It's important to realize that previous studies show improvements in the diabetic state likely as a result of weight loss on low-carb, high-fat diets. In this short study from 2005, we can see a dramatic improvement in the diabetic state on low-carb when calories were cut by about a third. In some ways, it looks like the results obtained in the Virta Health study are not really new information, and it doesn't constitute a paradigm shift except from the perspective of marketing. I think that explains the hype. You see, the novel part about Virta Health is the delivery of the keto instructions through a combination of medical supervision and electronic guidance, which is really the scalable part of this business model. Okay, back to the Virta Health study for a minute. And we can see their clinic manages type 2 diabetes from the perspective that it is a disease of carbohydrate intolerance. Their strategy is to manage your diabetes with severe carbohydrate restriction and long-term, basically lifelong, avoidance. In my opinion, this is about disease management, not reversal. So are you ready to stop eating healthy whole foods like most fruits, many vegetables, and all of the starchy staple foods that have been the foundation of the human diet since the dawn of the civilized world? Are you prepared to give up those foods long term, meaning for the rest of your life? If so, then operations like Virta Health will gladly provide you instructions for eating an extremely carbohydrate-restricted diet based around fat. And you become a patient under chronic disease management for life, always on guard not to eat that one apple. They claim the diet improves insulin resistance, but the measure they are using isn't based off of a carbohydrate challenge, but rather fasting levels of blood glucose and insulin. Neat trick, isn't it? The subjects are eating an extremely carbohydrate-restricted diet, and there's no carbohydrate challenge on the measure they report for insulin resistance. So based on the reported results, we don't know what would happen if you decided to eat more carbs than are found in an apple.
Can't take this stuff no more.
Let's see, what is 25 grams of carbohydrate? It's one apple. One apple. The key to this approach is each of us vary in our insulin resistance. And if you are profoundly insulin resistant like I am, and maybe have a diagnosis of diabetes, when you take carbohydrate, you cannot metabolize it normally, and people have to understand that. If you're like me, 25 grams of carbohydrate is all you may eat a day. That's it. You've got to get the grams of carbohydrate down below your threshold. And for me, it's 25. And to go up to 100, I would just put on weight and get progressively sicker. After 7 years on a high-fat diet, my diabetes has been reversed. Let's see, what is 25 grams of carbohydrate? It's one apple. One apple. After 7 years on a high-fat diet, my diabetes has been reversed.
So if you were to eat a normal meal with pasta or potatoes, or perhaps just that one apple, there you are. because you subscribed to a treatment path that embraces so-called carbohydrate intolerance through avoidance. This brings up some important questions, like what causes insulin resistance, and what happens on high-fat diets when you start eating carbohydrates. But I think we'll leave it here for today. If you want to break out of the chronic disease paradigm, make sure you hit subscribe so you can learn more about popular diets and their implications. Red Pill Vegan, next.